From the heart of Central Florida, you are listening to the most electrifying show in media. A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gornoski. Glad to be with you for this Friday edition of the program. We're live. Happy to have this time with you again as we explore things that make for peace, things that make for the good life, an abundant life, a life where we're not focused on hating the neighbor or fighting over who's going to get control of political power in some far-off city, but a life in which we can enjoy the moments that matter, moments with our friends, moments with those that we cherish as we grow, as we learn, as we get hopefully some good sunshine if you're able to, some fresh air or freedom. All of those things are important in this time. It's those small moments that we need to step back and enjoy as we have this time on earth and not get so caught up in the maelstrom, the tornado, the vortex of the conflicts that spew in the media. The media, for whatever reason, is fixated on seemingly reflecting, I guess, our appetite for conflict, for drama, for never-ending rivalry, to the point where left and right don't even look distinct anymore. They look like very interchangeable. Matt Taibbi had a piece in his website, he's formerly of the Rolling Stone magazine, where he says the Democratic Party used to be the one that would fight against nonviolent crimes. They were the ones that would say, hey, you can't just railroad people in the court system, and you can't just prosecute people who are your political enemies. They used to rail against the surveillance. Look at Nixon. Look at these stories, right? And now it's just yawns or, in some ways, outright embracing of the persecution of people like General Flynn. And then one does not have to have a single thing in common with the ideas or the foreign policy of someone like General Flynn to see the obvious, egregious breakdown of our institutions of law and justice, and the idea that privacy could be so tantamount and yet so flippantly tossed aside for political reasons, as we are starting to see uncover in the news. But, someone from my perspective who has helped me a lot to understand the news from an anthropological level is the work of Rene Girard. He was a Stanford professor, and I've referenced him a lot on the program. And, I have grown up as a pastor's son, so I have a background in the faith, but Rene Girard really provided me a great toolkit in his theory called mimetic theory to unpack the news and understand the patterns of human behavior in a way that could give some clarity and some pattern, detection ability about the same old stories of people trying to, create fake news. That's what they used to call mythology. That's where you cover for collective violence. And we see that in the news today, but we see it in our own lives, that we have a hard time bearing witness to the truth about the way we act and the way we treat others. So Rene Girard was a great, powerful influence in my intellectual understanding of the Christian faith, and someone who was very helpful in introducing me to Rene Girard was our guest that we have with us. He's someone who he did a 5-part interview series with Rene Girard as a broadcaster on CBC's Ideas programs. We have a wonderful broadcaster, David Kayley, with us. How you doing, David?
I'm fine, David. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad
to be with you.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you, and you're joining us from Canada, correct?
I'm joining you from my easy chair in my room, in my study in Toronto. Yes.
Well, very good. So, how are things going over there in Toronto? We're here in Florida, but we're also concerned about our friends around the country, around the world.
I would say that's hard to answer shortly.
Yeah.
Or briefly, but I think things are okay.
Well, good.
In a word.
Yeah.
There are a lot worse other places.
Yeah, I know that you spent some time in CBC Radio, so this is a little bit different radio format, but it's an honor to have you because, I think your interview series with Rene Girard was very helpful, and it has been helpful for a lot of folks. And in fact, I just had a few people contact me today saying, "Oh my goodness, I was recommended to listen to part 1 of your interview series with Rene Girard on ideas, and ended up wanting to watch all 5 hours." They said as soon as they got a hold of the first hour, they wanted to watch the whole series, 5 hours in a row.
Well, that's great.
So, what can we? I know this is going to be kind of a hard to do it justice in such a short format, but I do want to try to give people a hearing about the ideas that you were able to learn in your time with Rene Girard. His focus on why we get into conflict, I think, is very pressing. So maybe we could try to narrow it in first with his emphasis often on times of plagues. That's a crisis that draws people to conflict. And of course, we have a pandemic raging across the world right now. And, well, what do you know? We've got a lot of finger pointing going on as well.
Yes, it's true. There's a lot about that in Girard's work.
And
I mean, you've probably told your listeners about Girard before, but I mean, the essence of the theory, what was in a way revolutionary about it was his discovery, if you want, that we, as human beings, have no bottom. There is no authentic self at the bottom. We just keep mirroring one another all the way down. And it was his theory that was what was at the beginning for human beings, was their continual mirroring of one another, and therefore a tendency for conflict to escalate and to reach a point of crisis, which inevitably was solved the same way again and again by the finding of a scapegoat, by the finding of a victim who restored peace. Right? All against one is the formula for peace.
Right.
In human communities, and so the victim also became the god, since he had restored peace. And that, in a sentence, is his theory of archaic religion. And then he takes the further step in his second and third books of finding that Christianity demystifies this mechanism, exposes it, if you like, declares the victim, the crucified God, to be, in fact, innocent, which destroys the mechanism in a way by exposing it. It only worked when it happened behind people's backs, right? That they believed the victim was guilty, and so that's, I mean, that's really very condensed. But of course, the further step he took was then to say that this, after the Christian revelation was let loose on the world, things would get better and worse at the same time. People would have the formula for peace, but they would also have lost the formula for resolving their conflicts, the scapegoat mechanism. So violence would increase along with the overcoming of violence, a kind of apocalyptic dynamic which he saw in history and saw in the world around him to the day he died.
And I think we see it kind of happening now, because one of the things that's interesting in this pandemic is that we can't agree on who to blame. You know, everybody has somebody to blame, whether it's a politician or a political party or a government agency, or WHO has been, or China or America or whoever. But we can't find unity around. We can't get a prevailing accusation to really stick, can we?
No, this is notably true. Yeah.
And so I mean, it's almost like Girard's a forecaster here on this one. He really nailed it, because and we see this progressively happening. It seems like I've noted to a friend of mine in the past that it seems like with each war that we continue to try to engage in, at least in America, the power of the believability of the righteousness of that war seems to be waning faster and faster. And, it seems to be increasing the more we try to do the same thing again. So, if you look at just briefly in the small period of history we had in America recently with the war on terror, the public support for going after Osama bin Laden was unified almost 100% probably. Then you go to Saddam Hussein, pretty strong, 70%. Then it goes down, of course, as the war becomes a problem in the media depiction. And then you go into wars like Libya, not nearly as much support, very, very divided government, political appetite to go into get after Gaddafi. So that scapegoat wasn't as believable. And then you go into the more recent one with Assad, and that one was not nearly as uniting and bipartisan and public support for going after and doing regime change. And neither has Iran, for that matter. They're very divisive. They don't bring us together in a unified all against one fervor. So just in that little brief period of the war on terror, it's almost like you can see a trajectory of less and less believable and less unifying foreign enemies.
That's true, although looking at it, I don't know if this will be an unwelcome perspective, but the virus is a perfect enemy.
Yeah.
And so we have we have declared war on the virus. And that has been very unifying in Canada.
Right.
I would say. We have our heroes, our front line, and so on, right? So there is a sentimental unity produced by the pandemic, but I think the difficulty for me is that it blinds people to the damage that's being done, right?
Right.
Which I think is considerable and is going to ultimately be visited on the weakest. Those with, the young and, businesses failing in my neighborhood and so on. It's not clear to me that our extreme prudence, cautiousness about this is really sensible, and I think it's going to hurt people. And that there you do see a war psychology, I think, right?
Yeah.
So
we're speaking with David Kayley. He's had over 30 years. He made radio documentaries for CBC Radio's Idea series. We'll continue live with Mr. Kayley when we continue on A Neighbor's Choice.
A lawsuit is a devastating process for families. It can be an emotional roller coaster ride. There is a law firm in Tampa Bay that practices with this in mind. That law firm is Catania & Catania. We know and handle personal injury law for families with care. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania & Catania will take care of the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't even realize they can claim compensation for their loss until they talk to us. Catania & Catania only represent private individuals. We treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's our way of practicing law. It's our commitment to you. Remember, we don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com, award-winning, over 28 years, and family first. Catania & Catania, personal injury, auto accident, and motorcycle accident attorneys.
Attorney spokeswoman. The one thing that we've learned from an epidemic is that if we are healthy, we are far less likely to be susceptible to grave sickness. With that stated, stem cell activation is a big part of keeping ourselves healthy. By activating your own stem cells, you'll experience energy, better sleep, reduction in pain, and a support system that supports faster healing from wounds. LifeWave X39 patches are an easy, cost-affordable way to activate stem cells. Clinical studies demonstrate that LifeWave patches reset the genes in the body to a younger, healthier state. By wearing the daily patch, your body will activate the stem cells to give you benefits of a better way of living a healthy, productive life. Go to lifewave.com/B radio to see how you can elevate, activate, and regenerate your life with stem cell therapy. There's a special offer now with B Radio. The address again is lifewave.com/B radio. Live healthier and watch. .com/B radio.
Let's face it, these are stressful times. New routines, the constant bombardment of bad news, and trying to keep you and your family safe all the time. It's Frank for Center for Men's Health. During these stressful times, your mood is so critical, and nothing's more important to a guy's mood than testosterone. The single greatest issue for guys with low T is mood, and the single greatest change for men that get low T care is a greatly improved mood. Many are grumpy when they start, and most can't believe how much their mood improves once they get treated. And everything improves once your mood improves. Feel the difference C4MH.com can make in your life. I've been a patient of C4MH.com for a couple of years, and recently I've lost 20 pounds because now I have the energy to work out from home. And that'll put you in a good mood too. C4MH.com's express treatment plan is convenient, affordable, and above all, safe. And with locations all up and down West Florida, there's one near you right now. Find out more. Go to C4MH.com.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. We're live. I'm David Gornoski, your host, and we're soaring high across the Sunshine State, and we're joined by a real special guest, someone who I really enjoy listening to his content, David Kayley. He's a former broadcaster at CBC on the program Ideas, and it's been a very impactful series. Just a few of the different interviews I've heard with Rene Girard and my other guy that I like, Illich, who you were friends with, right, David Kayley?
Yes, Illich and I were good friends, yes.
Very good. And how often were you able to interact with Rene, by the way?
Well, I had the series you mentioned was recorded in 2000, I think, and I spent a wonderful few days there in Southern California with the Girards, but I didn't see him frequently afterwards. His work spawned an organization called the Colloquium on Violence and Religion.
Yes.
Which is an annual gathering. It has its own journal. It's a little society of its own, and they came to Canada in 2006. So I was there for that great event and did a couple more programs about them on that occasion. But otherwise, no. The last time I saw him was late in his life when he was in a kind of twilight.
Yeah.
He was it seemed almost a seraphic state.
Uh-huh.
A beautiful presence, but he wasn't engaging, let's say.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I want to kind of go back to what you were saying there before the break. And I know you had a different medium in radio. So you would go, first of all, with Rene Girard, when you interviewed him, would you just have like a tape recorder, or how did you record those interviews?
Yes, no, Ivan Illich joked with me that, the first time I interviewed him, he almost couldn't carry the tape recorder, and the last time I interviewed him, it was pocket-sized. So I think it was a big, I don't know how long you've been in the business, David. It was a big old Nagra, I think.
Wow.
You remember those?
No, I'm too young for that.
You're too young for that. It was a Swiss tape recorder. It was a beautiful thing, but it was, yes. So I would set up two mics, and I think we recorded over 2 or 3 days, like at great length. and then I edited the shows out of that.
And I like the genre documentary radio. That's an interesting phrase. It's something that I've wanted to pursue. You know, this is a live medium, but I like the idea of what you were able to do to present a kind of documentary experience through the audio, you know, auditorial experience of radio. It's interesting.
Yeah. It was a great joy to me.
I
meet a lot of interesting people.
Yeah, it really has. And, you know, I'm 31 years old. Your career spanned 30 years, so you know it's you've been doing it a long time and impacted a lot of folks. But I want to go back to that something you were also saying about the unintended folks who could suffer.
Yes.
I think that's interesting, and I think you're right. They're trying to create a unity around, well, we will defeat the dragon that is this pandemic, this unseen enemy, this virus. But you're right, in unifying us against this unseen pathogen, there are hidden victims in our time. You know, the idea of using coercion to lock down businesses and, you know, freedom and different things in such a heavy-handed way, at least in my experience, some of the things I've seen, I feel like you said, it does have this really bad undercurrent, this unseen victimization that's taking place. It's not so unseen because there are cameras, you know, and that's changing the game. Yeah,
but I mean, I do think we have no idea. I don't think Canada and the United States are probably all that different ultimately in this respect, right? I mean, we've already accumulated a debt which is unprecedented. We don't know what it will do, right?
Right.
We've the layoffs are just starting. The suffering that we're producing, I think, in the long run will greatly outweigh the suffering that would have been created by the virus. And I think there's a fear that's set loose, you know, which is, I mean, we live in this world at hazard. It's a dangerous place, right?
Yeah.
Viruses are one of the dangers. There's no doubt about it. I'm not speaking up for the little critter, but I'm saying, in my view anyway, we might have done better to at least wait and see. In Canada, it was just, it was total panic, I think. We've got to act now. We've got to send everybody home. We've got to shut everything down. If we wait to find out what we're dealing with, it'll be too late. These are habits of thought that I think had been cultivated for a long time. And I think, enabled us to shoot ourselves in the foot, in my opinion.
I think you're onto something there. Let's continue that thought. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to unpack how the influence of Christianity kind of shapes the unique concern of shutting everything down universally to protect, as they say in the media, if we can save just one life, it will all be worth it, we are told. Let's unpack that, and let's understand that in just a moment.
Good, I'd like to talk about that.
David Kayley's with us. DavidKayley.com is his website. We'll be back in just a moment.
Special report, coronavirus update. President Trump wants churches and other places of worship to reopen.
The governors need to do the right thing and allow these very important, essential places of faith to open right now for this weekend. If they don't do it, I will override the governors. In America, we need more prayer, not less.
The coordinator of the White House Coronavirus Task Force is providing some guidance for all Memorial Day get-togethers. Dr. Deborah Birx says people can enjoy outdoor activities as long as they stay mindful of distancing guidelines. And she says lots of Americans are carrying the virus and don't know it. Vice President Mike Pence had lunch today with Georgia's governor at a cafe that reopened under the state's eased restrictions. Pence said Georgia was leading the way after reopening salons, restaurants, gyms, and other businesses last month. I'm Jan Johnson.
Right now, home sweet home has never been sweeter. Our homes are more important than ever, and finding people we trust to take care of them is just as important. For over 20 years, Home Advisor has been connecting homeowners with trusted local plumbers, electricians, roofers, and more. And now we're making it easier than ever for great pros to join the Home Advisor network. For a limited time, home service businesses can get $200 in free advertising. Visit homeadvisor.com/start200 for details. That's homeadvisor.com/start200.
I'm Dan Bongino, and I interview some of the biggest names in politics on the biggest topics.
The President of the United States, President Donald J. Trump. Mr. President, thank you so much for joining us today. It is a great honor. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you for all of the great things you've said. You are a warrior.
So we got a lot ahead. Welcome to the Dan Bongino Show.
Listen and subscribe to my daily podcast free on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, David Gornoski here. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. So glad you could be with us. We're live, and we have a special guest, someone who's a real veteran of the broadcast world, David Kayley. He's spent over 30 years working on CBC Radio in Canada for the Ideas series. He also has a podcast you can listen to on davidkayley.com. And we're exploring the pandemic from a kind of looking at it and how our reactions are uniquely shaped by our influence by Christianity and the values, the aesthetic, let's say, of the idea that God stands on the side of a victim of the collective, a victim of politics, a victim of religious establishment, someone abandoned and rejected and totally shunned by all, and left to die in the trash dump of his city, of his own place that he was there to be a servant of. So, David Kayley, I think what's interesting about what we're seeing here is we do have, again, in a Rene Girard way to look at it, a sacrificial crisis here because, we can't agree on who the common enemy is. Yeah, we have this surface thing about, the virus is, but it's not, it's like saying punch a pillow if you're angry. It doesn't really do enough satisfaction, does it, to just say an invisible enemy. We need something a little more tangible, so we start pointing fingers. Well, it's you. You didn't wear a mask. You're the danger. I'm scared of you. Or it's you. You kept your church going,
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah. So it devolves into finger pointing in a more, out of control way because we can't agree on a common enemy that will bind us together. So what's interesting though is that the way that we're told to sacrifice, like you said, the debt, what that does to sacrifice for future generations and people in the economy in the next few years, we have no full understanding of. But yet we're doing it because the mantra that you hear over and over again in the American media is, it's all worth it if we can save one life. Right?
Well, I know, and that's I think a Talmudic statement. I think that is in the Talmud, right? He who saves one life saves the whole world.
Interesting. Yeah.
But as a political idea, it's almost criminally irresponsible. because politics is about rough and ready moral choices, right?
Right.
And I think the governor of New York said that explicitly, I know, and I think lots of others have. You say it's a mantra, so obviously lots of people have said it. But in fact, it just means we don't look at who's being sacrificed, right? We just focus on one thing and overlook the... it's possible. There's a epidemiologist called Bhattacharya at Stanford who's written on this in an essay called Lives versus Lives, who predicts, and this is an epidemiologist, not an economist, who predicts that the consequences in poor countries of the global recession, depression that is likely to ensue will so far outweigh the loss of life that would have been sustained by staying open, not doing nothing, but not shutting everything down, right?
Right.
So yeah, we often just don't. It's what's visible, right? That's what counts, and that's a media effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
To a remarkable extent. I mean, the day after the WHO declared a pandemic, in our newspapers in Toronto spoke of nothing else, for weeks on end, the whole newspaper. Well, what impression does that leave? That there is nothing else, right? That this is the sole reality. And so I think, you know, the war metaphors were part of it. I think the war metaphors were a huge part of it. The whole sentimental mythology of frontline workers and our heroes and our champions. A whole world was constructed. And my question is, what is obscured or occluded by that world? I think harm to others that we don't want to look at. So,
Caiaphas said it's better that one man die than the whole nation perish, and it seems like the mantra is explicit or implicitly, it's better that the whole nation die than one man perish. You know, the whole economic vitality and the ensuing deaths from depression or suicide or other illnesses. There's a lot of, I've heard a story from a doctor that in Texas that they were prohibiting, you know, they were basically prohibiting the what they called elective surgeries, like cancer related stuff and other major issues were being totally pushed away.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. And that may in the end be worse than what we have. But I sense that what you're hinting at is that this is an implication of Girard's theory, right?
Right.
That we develop as a perverse consequence of seeing the innocence of the victim, the innocence of the crucified Lord. We develop a kind of victimology, right? In which victim status is then recoined as a kind of power over others, right? So, and that was a huge part of Illich's view, his kind of version of Western history. He put into an old saying, "The corruption of the best is the worst," right?
Yeah.
The gospel for him being the best, but the worst being the attempt to realize this on earth, to not understand that, you know, my kingdom is not of this world, right? That this is not a political proposal that can be implemented, right? But we live in the world of zero tolerance. Of we're not going to stand for this. We're not going to, you know, we're going to wrestle this virus to the ground. It's a kind of claim that perfection is possible, right?
Right.
That we can be safe. We can never be safe. So anyway, over to you.
And the news making process is like real time. You know, Girard talked about mythology concealing the victims, concealing the violence, and news making is like real time myth making, in that we get to see in real time. And because there's multiple vantage points and because there's multiple perspectives that we can seek out that dissent, we're able to see the failure of the news making mythology in real time if we look. For example, I'm not making a political claim here because I don't really care about the party thing, but you know, Andrew Cuomo was, you know, heralded by much of the media as, wow, I mean, a true hero. And yet, you know, he had a policy where he was sending people, seniors who are infected with coronavirus, back into nursing homes.
I know.
And then you had Pennsylvania, where they had the governor doing the same thing, sending coronavirus-infected patients back into nursing homes. And then they found out that the Secretary of Health for Pennsylvania had her mother taken out of the nursing home ahead of time of the policy and put into a hotel. Meanwhile, everybody else's mothers and fathers and whoever were just, going to have to deal with the consequences of putting a new virus into a nursing home where the air conditioning vent and everything's going to blow that around. I can't believe, that it's not more apparent. But I think the good news is, David, is that because of the gospel allowing for multiple vantage points, we're able to see clearly what we're doing, that we can't hide this kind of, this is a hero. This is the hero of the, this is the person saving us from this pandemic. Well, no, look here. You're putting seniors into the virus. You're putting seniors in harm's way with this virus.
Yes, well, I call no one good but God is a saying I like to remember.
There's a problem also, I think, that we could look at with the perspective of Girard when it comes to the whole new normal that we all need to wear masks.
Yeah.
Of course, there's health issues with that. But I think from a anthropological standpoint, there's that background that we have with masks in our archaic societies that you talked about with Girard, where whenever there was a festival or a carnival, and I'm not suggesting this is what we're doing, but I'm just kind of going back to our history with mask wearing, that it was usually for a festival or a carnival in which we would all let loose and obscure our identity into an anonymous state of undifferentiation, where everybody's got a mask on, don't really know who's who, and you would have a carnival or a festival where you just let loose, have a feast, have role reversals. The slaves will be served by the masters. This was in the Saturnalia festival. They did that, and many others. And then at the end of that festival, you culminate with a sacrifice to remind people, okay, look, we got to let loose, but this is what happens when we let loose. We have to go give a sacrifice so that the gods don't send us off into chaos here. Well, I'm a little concerned about this normalization of mask wearing, what that might bring out of us,
Well, certainly I'm very frightened of it, and I think your analysis, if you don't mind my saying so, is quite brilliant. To see the archaic dimension in it. I'm very uneasy with it. It seems irrational to me. Young people who, if they get this illness, it will probably be nothing, walking around in the out of doors in a mask, right? It seemed to me the message is much more what's going on than any safety that's provided to them or others. And I think what you're saying is, it's a little terrifying, though, isn't it?
It is.
But I think it's apt, and I'm very strongly averse to it. I don't like to see it.
Well, Jesus talked about the word, hypocrites a lot, and that word comes from the Greek, play tradition, when the dramatic actors would wear a mask. They would become presented as someone else, Right. And I think that, we're going to see a lot of that, original meaning of the word hypocrite come to surface here if we're not able to, stop the kind of nastiness that happens when we obscure our identity. You see it online right now where, people are anonymously able to join witch hunts and accusation mobs. Now that's going to be put into real life. If everybody's got a mask on and you don't know who's who, now that online vitriol might start surfacing out into our daily lives. Let us hope not. We'll continue live with David Kayley as we unpack some of the implications of this pandemic in light of Christianity and its impact in our world. More to come in just a moment.
A lawsuit is a devastating process for families. It can be an emotional roller coaster ride. There is a law firm in Tampa Bay that practices with this in mind. That law firm is Catania and Catania. We know and handle personal injury law for families with care. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania Catania will take care of the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't even realize they can claim compensation for their loss until they talk to us. Catania and Catania only represent private individuals. We treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's our way of practicing law. It's our commitment to you. Remember, we don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com, award-winning, over 28 years, and family first. Catania Catania, personal injury, auto accident, and motorcycle accident attorneys.
Man, how can you afford gas for that big SUV?
I pay less for gas than everyone else. I got the free Get Upside Gas app and get up to 25 cents a gallon cash back every time I buy gas.
Hold on. You're getting up to 25 cents off a gallon with the free Get Upside Gas app while I'm paying full price?
You know it. People earned over $1 million last year. You just got to take a picture of your gas receipt and bam, up to 25 cents a gallon cash back.
You don't have to tell me twice. I'm downloading the free Get Upside Gas app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now in the App Store or Google Play to save up to 25 cents a gallon when you buy gas. Use promo code TRUCK for a 20-cent a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's up to 45 cents a gallon on your next tank. Just download the free Get Upside app at the App Store or Google Play and use promo code TRUCK. Save money on gas on every fill-up. Download the free Get Upside app and use promo code TRUCK. That's TRUCK.
Looking to enhance your workout at home social distancing? There's no better way to do that than with a post-workout supplement from Fortify. It's the new all-in-one pre- and post-workout supplement. It's completely all-natural. There are no artificial flavors or sweeteners. Fortify Fit is the first of its type in the U.S. Fortify Fit combines all 10 of the latest sports nutrition ingredients in one canister. Build muscle, strength, endurance with Fortify Fit. Plus, it'll kickstart your immune system quickly, safely. Right now, you receive 25% off by using the code RADIO. Use the code RADIO to receive the 25% off discount. Fortify Fit, created and designed by board-certified Dr. Michael Lang. You know him as the radio host of Ask the Doctor. Get Fortify Fit with 2 delicious flavors, strawberry watermelon and fruit punch. Amazing results when using pre- and post-workouts. Fortify Fit, available at fortify.com. That's FORTIFEYE.com. Remember the EYE in Fortify. Dr. Michael Lang's Fortify Fit with 2 delicious flavors, keeping America fit and healthy during this time of precautionary change.
A Neighbor's Choice returns. I'm David Gornoski here with David Kayley, who's a broadcasting veteran of CBC radio in Canada, and someone who's made an impact by interviewing a lot of the most interesting folks you can think about in the world of ideas on his series called Ideas. His website's davidkayley.com. If you're interested in checking out some of his content, some of his writing and his podcast, visit davidkayley.com. And we're talking about the pandemic right now in light of Christianity and some of the influence of Rene Girard on both of our thinking. So, David, as we were mentioning, it's a frightening thing to think about seeing some of the things that Girard pointed out that would be a repercussion of our past history of scapegoating people and sacrificing one for the greater good, and then how Christianity has come along and disrupted that, which has given us tremendous upside and innovation and creativity, but also a lot of downside because we are stubborn. We do not want to give up our prerogative to scapegoat, do we?
No, I think that's right, and that's where Illich comes in here with this idea of the corruption of the best is the worst, right? That it gives you, if you hitch the old, to put it in the terms you've been developing, if you hitch the old mechanism, the gospel speaks of this, doesn't it? Putting new wine in old bottles is perhaps an apt scapegoating practices to the new dispensation, you're in a way worse off than you were before. That reminds me of about 5 other parables, which I won't cite.
It brings to mind kind of something I'll quote it from, I'll paraphrase it from the Gospels, the story in Luke of Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem, and along the way they're chanting his name because they think he's going to be their hero. He's going to save them. They believe he's the one they've been looking for, and the leaders say, tell those folks to be silent. This is nonsense. And Jesus says, if they're silent, the stones will cry out. And he was quoting the Old Testament prophet Habakkuk. He was quoting from Habakkuk chapter 2, which, in verse 11, the stones of the wall will cry out, and the beams of the woodwork will echo it. It says, woe to him who builds a city with bloodshed and establishes a town by injustice. Has not the Lord determined that the people's labor is only fuel for the fire, that the nations exhaust themselves for nothing? For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And I think about that, and I think, what's interesting about that passage is 2 things, and maybe you see something here too. He's calling to mind this idea when he references Habakkuk, this prophet, about woe to him who builds a city on injustice. The stones cry out. In the ancient world, they would start a new city by sacrificing someone in a cornerstone laying ceremony. They would bless the inauguration of a new town by laying sometimes live victims in a gruesome manner to create a new city. And Habakkuk's calling that into light here. It's pretty chilling, pretty grim stuff. And it's interesting because Jesus is kind of basically calling that prophecy, that indictment on our appetite to build cities based on hidden victims, to conquer pandemics with hidden victims, to create media narratives and history narratives that try to elect heroes with hidden victims underneath. And he condemns it fully as what is about to happen with him when his own community kills him and those stones cry out for injustice. Right. And he makes a prophecy there that the knowledge of the Lord will fill the earth as the ocean is filled with water. I think we're seeing that right now. I think, this pandemic is evidence that Jesus' prophecy is coming into history, and we're seeing this happen, that the knowledge of the Lord is filling the earth as the sea is wet, and that people are crying out for justice for victims, increasingly so, to the point where we can't even keep our institutions intact because we're dizzy trying to keep up with all the injustices and all the victims.
Well, okay. I don't disagree with any of that.
So should we be optimistic or pessimistic?
Both. Yeah. I think the answer is both. It goes back to what Rene Girard said to me so simply, and I can remember it took my breath away. He said, after the crucifixion, he said, things will get better and worse at the same time. Things will get better and worse at the same time. And I thought, well, that's true. That's the way it has gone. That's the way it is. You can't answer one or the other. You can't answer optimistic or pessimistic because Christianity and Judaism are apocalyptic religions. That is, they operate by a logic of revelation, of which is what apocalypse means. The veil of the temple was rent in twain. You could actually see, what had been obscured becomes visible, and I think that logic operates in our history, and yes, things are now plainer than they ever have been in a certain way. But as you say, on the other hand, we can hardly keep up. We're dizzy, right? We're defeated by all of it. We have, so it's both.
Yeah, we're morally exhausted, with all the outrage.
Yeah, exactly so.
Do you see this? Is it possible for humans? I mean, I know this is a tough question, and we're not going to do it justice. But is it possible for us to renounce our scapegoating behavior, or is that something that only God can sort out after it's all said and done?
Well, I mean, Girard's answer to that was simple, and so was Illich's, right? We can only imitate the one who won't imitate us back. The Lord will not imitate us back. If we imitate one another, sooner or later we're lost. So we can only save ourselves by imitating the divine, which doesn't, I think, necessarily have to be understood in a sectarian way, right? You could as easily imitate the generosity of a flower, right?
Mm-hmm.
That reveals its beauty to you just by its nature. It doesn't have to be sectarian, but I think we can only imitate what won't imitate us back, what takes us out of the logic of violent reciprocity, right? Girard's last book was called Battling to the End. He took on, amongst other things, Clausewitz and the logic of war, right? But the logic of violent reciprocity is inexorable, right? I mean, and you see it. We have it we have it more mildly here. Happily, I don't think our culture war is quite as intense as yours is, but it's there, right? And Canadians gleefully take on Donald Trump as a scapegoat. He's perfect for them. So I think we have to step out of the logic of violent reciprocity. That's all that can be done.
Very good. David Kayley, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Well, thank you, David. I'm glad to... Greetings to all your listeners in Florida. It's a strange thought to think I'm going over the air in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, pretty cool. And Orlando, too. So thank you for your time. We look forward to listening to more of your content on davidkayley.com. Have a good weekend.
Okay, thanks a lot, David. All the best. Bye.
Bye-bye. A Neighbor's Choice. That's it. Remember, you can always email me, david@aneighborschoice.com, if you have a guest suggestion or a comment or thought you'd like to share. Just email david@aneighborschoice.com. Have a great weekend. Godspeed.